All right, we're here. Getting started here for the next impressive conversation we're about to have. So, Supra, many of you don't know that we have also had a very deeply integrated DeFi team, right? So, Supra has been envisioning what can we do with our technology. So, the core insight is the following: this notion of high throughput layer one. Yes, once again, that's table stakes. We're competing with the fastest chains in the world. We're getting to the same academic journals as them as well. Great. Then you also have, what else can a blockchain do? You have to ask yourself the question: blockchains are closed loop systems. They don't necessarily communicate with the outside world. They don't communicate with each other. So then you start to think about, okay, this notion of a layer one blockchain, high throughput, low latency, very fast, extreme throughput. We're talking like 10, 20x Visa, MasterCard combined. It's possible, right? For global scale, that's what we're talking about. Great. We're all looking at that, from Solana to Sui to Aptos to Supra. We're all doing that. Now, at the same time, we have to ask ourselves, what else can smart contract platforms do? Smart contracts are closed loop systems. Right? They don't communicate with the outside world. Blockchains don't communicate with each other. So it's very natural. We all know that there's product market fits for getting data from the outside world into a blockchain and also getting data from a blockchain to each other. This is what's called the Oracle problem, right? So getting price feeds from external venues, exchanges. The price of Bitcoin is traded across hundreds of venues across the world. There's just not one national where you get the price. It's global. So how do you coalesce that information and create a representative value in real time on the order of like 700, 800 milliseconds and provide that to smart contract platforms? That's something that Super has endeavored to do, and we're doing it. And also we're proving it. Like this is provable kind of stuff we're doing, right? Now imagine a high throughput layer one smart contract platform, but also it's multilingual. It's EVM compatible. It's move language compatible. Solana virtual machine compatible, Cosmos compatible, etc. So it can speak many languages. Great. Imagine every block in this global ordering machine has price data, price sheet data, so Oracle data. And imagine you have also zero delay automation execution. So automation means it decentralized if this and that. But imagine if this was able to be executed in a deterministic manner, in a transparent manner. Great. So now this blockchain finally starts to look like a computer. Great. Cool. Because it can speak to the outside world. It can actually do things based off of various conditions, and imagine cross-chain communication protocols. And they have the ability to communicate through blockchain to blockchain, not through programming languages. It's through cryptography. Compatibility through cryptography. So only language that's universal. Cryptography, mathematics. And then, of course, you throw into it something that we've always talked in the beginning, which is on-chain randomness. On-chain randomness is a very limited resource because blockchains are deterministic. Systems that are very perfect in order. Consensus protocols are saying, hey, we all agree. So in a system where we all agree, how do you create unpredictability or randomness or chaos, right? That's why actually all computer scientists know on-chain randomness is a very interesting concept. Super aspires to put all this together: high throughput, multi-chain communication, multi-VM support, on-chain randomness, and automation, and also price feeds, right? But this is all a subset of what's called verifiable compute. These are all different flavors of what's called verifiable compute. Now, collectively, for us to put this forward and the industry forward, what is it ultimately that we care about? We care about a system that is secure, has to be secure, has to be high throughput, has to be able to control. When I say control, I'm saying that's a misnomer. You have to actually handle the throughput of a decentralized network that can handle the bandwidth and throughput of, like I said, 10 pieces of MasterCards all at once. It has to be global scale. Now, this type of system, furthermore, has to be, this is where it gets very difficult, it has to be decentralized. And with decentralization comes actual security. These protocol guarantees only kick in with actual decentralization. We're in a world where actually the old paradigm has been absolute control. That's just the way that our species has evolved towards. It's natural, I think. Unless we're evolving to a different era, which is facilitated by technology, in which there actually isn't absolute control. We all know that absolute power absolutely corrupts. And anyone that says, no, I can handle it, is impossible. We have to create systems that are global scale. They're actually at the point where it's completely decentralized and security is guaranteed because it's decentralized. Now, such an infrastructure, wow, what could we do? Can we power a couple of things? Can we power the exchange of value on a global scale? Can we power governance on a global scale? Can we power combating the other ultimate technology, which is AI on a global scale? And we're talking about the only technology that exists to keep it honest is cryptography. And it turns out cryptography is what keeps the blockchain in order. Now, with that said, Supra is bringing to market something very interesting. It's a collective movement. It's beyond ourselves. We are contributing to, we're standing on the shoulders of the giants, from Satoshi Nakamoto to Calibutrin to Anatoly and others. And the bottom line is, I think we all agree that this is technically neutral technology, but it's also mathematically based. And this is something that we can all agree upon. We all agree that we can't break the crypto. And even post-quantum crypto, it's solvable. Let's put it that way. The research is way ahead of the implementation anyways. So we should be grateful. We're grateful because there is some sort of framework in which we can contain something as expressive and impressive as AI. That's cryptography. Now, blockchains can play a role in what's called PKI, public key infrastructure, to basically, in a nutshell, help people prove that they are who they say they are. And then in the world of AI, that this model was trained the way that it's supposed to be trained. And also what I'm speaking to is the model that I think I'm speaking to or I'm engaging with. And then in that paradigm, you have to imagine, what does value exchange look like? It turns out crypto, blockchain rails, it's like the perfect rails for AI agents to communicate on our behalf. And I believe we're moving into an era, each and one of us will have our own individual Jarvis. And those individual Jarvises, you can speak to him or her or they or whatever you want to call them, in a way that you can be unfiltered, that is privacy preserving. And if you want to say, hey, listen, I have this meme coin on this chain and I want to exchange it for something else or some NFT on some layer 2, I want to get it executed in the most efficient manner possible. That means less fees, faster, less gas expense, etc. Now, folks call that intents. Those are called intents. Great, cool. But the truth is, if you express your intent to the marketplace, they will create something called intent extractable value, which is a subset of MEV, maximal extractable value. So I view this as the techniques that are being promoted today, especially for cross-chain intent, is mediocre. Let's put it that way. I think the future is going to be much, much more privacy preserving, and in such a way that you can, it's basically AI at the edge. You have your own Jarvis, your own kind of private enclave. You can speak to it or whatever it is in natural language, say, this is my intention. Please craft the right transaction for me. And what's interesting is that Supra is trying to build the infrastructure in which you can do a multi-chain transaction in a very sophisticated manner. You can have very sophisticated strategies. You can say, hey, I want this and this. It can only get this and this. And you can create a conditional transaction on Supra that can communicate with multiple blockchains. So that's where we're headed. I don't know if this is 3 years from now or 10 years from now or 50 years from now, but I'm certain it's going to happen in this general direction. Now, what can Supra bring to the table? We're bringing something what's called a liquidity network in a decentralized manner. We call it intralayer. It's a middle infrastructure that can facilitate coordination across blockchains through cryptography, right? Now, at the heart of this type of system, what is the brain? How does this thing rebalance itself? And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about something that has not been brought to market yet. We know about AMMs, about constant market makers, about Uniswap. We also know about the limitations of those designs, which include slippage and internet loss, and it's imperfect. Nonetheless, it's a great start and it's incredible. So we always have to pay homage to where it all came from. Now, the natural evolution is from coarse and just like broad strokes to refinement and granular execution on parameters. So that basically goes from this notion of automatic market maker to a dynamic function market maker. There's many levers at play, especially in a decentralized ecosystem. In a world that we now know at this point is proven, it is multi-chain future. So we want to ask ourselves a couple of things. What is the infrastructure required to bring Web2 experiences to Web3? And to what it comes down to is like the big problems are this notion of fractured liquidity, that there's pockets of value all over these layer 2s, and it gets worse and exacerbated by layer 3s, and don't get me started on layer 4s, you know what I'm saying? There's subnets and parachains and all that stuff, right? Fractured liquidity, all is fractional, it's not great. Now, can we create a protocol that can unify the liquidity? Turns out it has to be a combination of consensus algorithms, smart contract platforms, cross communication, oracles, automation, and DeFi primitives all in one. So the vertical integration of what Supra is doing is beyond just the core infrastructure. It's enshrining DeFi primitives. And in the next 20 minutes, we're going to discuss where we are going to Karsh, our DeFi leads and big brains and partners and innovators that bridge the world of Web 2, TradFi to Web 3. Because it turns out the concepts are universal. The technology, Web 3 can do things that Web 2 cannot do. So with that said, let's dive into the presentation of the dynamic function market maker, and we'll move into the panel discussion.
Today, we present our dynamic function market maker, which is a decentralized, adaptive, and fully automated market maker based on a novel external market aggregation and order routing protocol. We start by providing an overview of Supra's intralayer vision through a block diagram. Our future webinars will delve deeper into the intralayer vision, explaining how the infrastructure layer and DeFi layer integrate to form Supra's comprehensive intralayer infrastructure. The dynamic function market maker, or DFMM in short, is a key building block of this intralayer infrastructure. It is a novel automated market maker protocol designed to enable efficient price discovery for both cross-chain and single-chain value conversions. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, it's worth stating the key problems in some of current AMM designs, which motivated us to develop this novel market-making engine. First is the inefficient synchronization of price-sensitive information, which leads to impermanent loss. Second, inefficient liquidity distribution, which increases slippage and leads to inefficient utilization of liquidity submitted to the AMMs. Third, poor inventory risk management, which threatens long-term viability of the protocol and makes it prohibitively unsustainable for passive LPs to participate in the system. And finally, an accounting counterpart assets is used to solve the problem of disjointed liquidity pools and enables the facilitation of single-sided liquidity. In this slide, we outline how each of the problems identified in the previous section are addressed in our novel framework. We tackle lack of synchronicity in prices using a virtual order book, which helps assert the principle of one price and maximally mitigates impermanent loss. We tackle inefficient liquidity distribution by concentrating maximum liquidity around the last traded price, augmented by asset-specific risk characteristics. We introduce an automated and decentralized inventory risk management mechanism designed to mitigate risk for passive liquidity providers. It is supported through the rebalancing process and the use of derivatives native to the protocol. And finally, the accounting counterpart asset we introduced in the preceding slides is used to solve the problem of disjointed liquidity pools and enables the facilitation of single-sided liquidity. In addition to the unique value propositions of an AMM protocol, DFMM can be also viewed as a DEX aggregating and trade routing framework, competing with off-chain competitors. As a DEX aggregator, DFMM can 1. Enable better incentive compatibility by ensuring that the router's return is also directly related with the efficiency of execution path rather than only routed transaction volume. 2. It does not just allocate the router role to a single entity, but rather it makes the routing an open competition, inviting the best agents who meets the infrastructural requirement to act as an arbitrager and provide the routing service. As such, it does not introduce any single point of failure or prohibitive assumptions, which may compromise the security of provided services. But before delving into the details, let's first state a few important preliminary concepts, which viewers who aren't adept with these concepts might wish to read before progressing to the next slide. In particular, we'd like to draw attention to the liquidity density function, which refers to the volume of a particular asset available to buy or sell at varying price points. In this and following slides, we will present the high-level schematic representation of the DFMM as data aggregation and optimal order routing protocol. As you can see in the example, there are two assets in DFMM liquidity pools ETH and SOL. DFMM receives aggregated price volume information from external trading venues via a Supra Oracle service to be applied to its pricing function. Let's suppose that some trades are being conducted in DFMM. Particularly, traders sell ETH to the market and buy SOL from the market. Due to this trading activity, some imbalance emerges in the market compared with the initial state. The system has an integrated derivative market mechanism via application of digital swaptions that enables the system to assess the risk created due to this imbalance and transfer some of that risk to market participants that are ready to take this risk. If after this risk transfer, there is still some unsustainable inventory imbalance, rebalancing premium auction is triggered to rebalance the unhedged inventory imbalance of two assets. This rebalancing auction increases optimal incentives for arbitrageurs to get involved and to conduct the opposite trade. Particularly, they buy ETH and sell SOL to the DFMM, therefore rebalancing the inventory. After, arbitrageurs can sell their acquired ETH in the external markets to realize the arbitrage return. Overall, all the transactions conducted in the process can be divided into two parts: transactions that are executed in the internal trading venue and transactions that are executed in the external trading venues. Furthermore, arbitrageurs can be seen also as routers propagating trades from the local market to the external market. In forthcoming slides, we will discuss the building blocks that constitute the dynamic function market maker. In summary, the system can be divided into three main blocks, including virtual order book, which aggregates price-sensitive information from external venues to improve the accuracy of local price data; inventory risk management system, which includes a unique derivative mechanism based on a digital swaption instrument to price and transfer any undesirable risk. Furthermore, this mechanism is applied to create a stable counterpart accounting asset to enable efficient aggregation of liquidity, facilitate inventory risk management, and enable LPs to provide single asset liquidity. The third block is DFMM's local market price discovery mechanism that is based on a dynamic rebalancing process. It financially incentivizes rebalancing flows and optimal behavior of agents that have conflicting objectives. We now introduce the first building block, that is the virtual order book. Virtual order book is an oracle-to-based aggregated snapshot of price volume dynamics of the same digital assets in competing external venues. To help better understand how DFMM populates and updates the virtual order book, consider the block diagram. On the left-hand side, three external venues of interest, where different price volume curves prevail. We use a network of oracles to collect these prices and then learn a quadratic function, which can satisfactorily describe a price-volume curve that is representative of the entire external market, and not just a single market of choice. The plot on the right-hand side of the slide represents this price and cumulative volume, where the dotted lines represent the learnt quadratics for bid and ask prices. This exercise enables us to come up with a consistent, reliable, and efficient means of understanding evolving price-volume dynamics outside DFMM. Specifically, learning a quadratic curve, instead of working off individual venues, enables us to smooth out discontinuities, remove kinks, and improve the signal-to-noise ratio on the information content. This is also meaningfully superior to measures like volume-weighted average price. Moving to the second building block, we now discuss DFMM's inventory risk management process. As previously described, our main objective is to solve the problems and inefficiencies created by liquidity fragmented across pools, which we do primarily using a stable common counterpart asset. Digital finance seeks to democratize market making by allowing users to passively engage in what was once exclusively the realm of specialized institutional agents. This democratization is facilitated through the use of decentralized automated market makers. Despite these advances, current automated market makers fail to effectively help these passive liquidity providers mitigate their inventory risk, potentially leading to unforeseen losses that can surpass the returns earned. We seek to maximally mitigate risks to even the least technical LP, using our two lines of defense, that is, the derivatives-based protection scheme and the rebalancing process. The need for this can be intuitively understood by referring to the block diagram on the right. It shows that although the assets and liabilities of the protocol are balanced at the point when the liquidity provider, LP, makes a deposit, with liabilities defined as the original assets submitted by LPs to the liquidity pools, it becomes imbalanced when traders demand one of the two assets more than the other. This exposes both the protocol and, indirectly, the LP to market risk. We now seek to explain this using animation in a few slides. Let's assume a liquidity provider contributes ETH to the liquidity pool, and we also assume that an equivalent amount of an arbitrary stablecoin, denoted as SUSD, is available, forming the pair. However, then, there is a demand for ETH, which is fulfilled by the protocol selling ETH in exchange for the stablecoin. This trade leads to an open inventory position in the system. Let's examine how changes in the asset balance within the pool due to trading activity, or in other words, an open inventory position, can lead to losses for liquidity providers. Suppose there's an imbalance and subsequently the price of ETH increases. If the ETH price rises, liquidity providers will incur losses because they cannot get their original amount of ETH or other asset with equivalent value from the AMM. The excess of stablecoins will not suffice to compensate for the deficit in ETH. To protect against this, we introduce secondary liquidity providers, who are sophisticated agents who open margin accounts, affirming intentions to offer derivative contracts to facilitate risk transfer, enabling stakeholders to customize their risk profile. They provide protection for adverse moves in the market in exchange for higher AMM fees. With SLP's involvement, if the price of ETH goes up, there is a payment from the margin vault to the ETH pool, causing the size of the margin vault to decrease, and an increase in the size of the ETH pool. This offsets the price risk of an open inventory position to the LP, as the available stablecoins would now be able to cover the shortfall. Similarly, if the ETH price decreases, there will be a transfer from ETH pool to the margin vault, leading to a decrease in the level of ETH pool and an increase in the level of margin vault. But even though the open inventory position increased after a transfer from the ETH pool, as the ETH price decreased, the available stablecoins would be enough to buy back the shortfall of ETH pool. Similar dynamics can also come into play if the trader sold us ETH and bought the stablecoin. Fortunately, since SLP offers protection on both long and short sides, by depositing assets in the relevant vault, their presence would also cover the risk of this opposing price move. In essence, this mechanism allows DFMM to issue a stable accounting asset backed by a combination of ETH pools and margin vaults, effectively making it over-collateralized. Furthermore, the stablecoin discussed in the example can be replaced with this accounting asset, enabling liquidity providers to contribute solely ETH, while the market itself generates this accounting asset and pairs it with the ETH. This arrangement does not permit users to purchase the accounting asset from the market. Instead, it serves as a common counterparty asset to eliminate liquidity fragmentation and enable single-sided liquidity provision, as well as to enhance internal order routing efficiency. Furthermore, because this accounting asset is over-collateralized, It also ensures that internal accounting operations and trades conducted with this counterpart asset are performed reliably. In the worst-case scenario, if the system has an open inventory position and the price falls below the maintenance level, liquidation auction is triggered, which deploys the residual amount of collateral as an incentive to rebalance the inventory. As with the insurance framework introduced in the slide outlining Supra's intra-layer vision, the SLP margin accounts are also a unique source of information. Because if the size of the margin vault is small, the market perceives it to be a high-risk asset, whereas if the size of margin vault is big, the market perceives it to be a low-risk asset. This information is applied to guide the system's rebalancing process. Now that we've covered the operational mechanics of SLP's involvement, we now consider the specific framework they use. We introduce a novel mechanism that is based on digital swaption, which is an option contract bestowing its holder the right, but not enforcing an obligation to enter into an average return swap, starting at a pre-specified date in the future, for a fixed maturity and rate set at the time of inception. The DFMM protocol and SLP participate in the mechanism, where the DFMM protocol acts on behalf of the PLP. The settlement related to the digital swaptions are conducted periodically, using a preset rules-based mechanism, and whether the DFMM is a variable leg payer or receiver is determined by the side of the exposure. Finally, for ease of our viewers' convenience, we present a summary schematic of the DFMM agent interaction on the left-hand side of the slide. We now move to the most important building block in DFMM, which is the local market, where all the information gained externally is eventually applied to update the price volume curves driving our trading. Our main objectives with the local market is to systematically aggregate available liquidity, be able to continuously and dynamically optimize premium paid to attract stabilizing flows, attempt to maintain a balanced inventory, and ensure that stakeholder incentives are always harmonized. Once again, let us consider the scenario where ETH deposited by an LP is balanced against stablecoins, and there is a demand for ETH by an external trader. We then use data from external markets to learn a quadratic curve representing a relationship between the price and volume on all external venues. Further, consider that there is a continuous demand for ETH, leading to the depletion of the asset from the pool to the point where the market can no longer facilitate any further transactions. At this point, we introduce a second quadratic representing the local market bid and ask curves, represented by solid lines. The difference in PV space between these two quadratics enables us to quantify the maximum benefit arbitrageurs can seek to monetize. From our perspective, to incentivize opposing flows, we seek to provide a premium in addition to the price prevailing in external venues, to attract rebalancing flows to our local platform. This opportunity is spotted by traders and arbitrageurs, who start bringing in desirable flows. This influx of desirable flows continues up to the point where the DFMM pool is rebalanced, and no more rebalancing premium is offered. Note that the system targets not only to avoid the depletion of the inventory pools, but also to avoid the unhedged open inventory positions, that is, inventory levels that are not protected by derivative contracts. Therefore, as soon as the inventory level falls below the protected level, the market already starts using the rebalancing auction to balance it back to the optimal level. Additionally, the protection can be sought on both long and short side, up to a level determined by the willingness of SLPs to provide protection. This tolerance level represents the point at which the rebalancing process kicks in. As we previously defined, rebalancing premium is the price difference of an asset between local and external markets, which arbitrageurs compete to maximally monetize. However, to understand the extent to which we need to pay a premium, we trace the difference between bought and sold accounting assets for each pool, which is equivalent to tracing the open inventory position of the liquidity pools in nominal terms. We denote it by Tx. In nominal terms, the rebalancing function maps Tx to the rebalancing premium. If Tx is 0, then there are no rebalancing needs, and the rebalancing premium is also equal to 0. However, if Tx deviates from 0, we know that there is an open inventory position, necessitating a positive rebalancing premium to be paid. This premium is paid by the agents who created the imbalance and is earned by the agents who bring the inventory to a balanced state. Furthermore, as you can see in the function on the right-hand side, the function has two types of coefficients which impact the aggressiveness of rebalancing. These coefficients, A and D, are dynamically updated and seek to strike the right balance between the interest of agents and protocol. Now, to describe the internal price discovery mechanism in the DFMM, let's review the diagram on the left-hand side. Both assets, X and Y, are paired with synthetic accounting coins. For the trader to swap asset X to asset Y, the following process needs to be followed. First, the trader submits the asset X to the X liquidity pool. After the submission, the system automatically converts asset X to the accounting coin using the external virtual order book and conducts a synthetic transaction, sending the converted volume of accounting asset from the accounting coin pool paired with asset X to the accounting asset pool paired with asset Y. This activates the rebalancing premium process, which leads to the system calculating the amount of rebalancing premium that needs to be paid or received by the trader for both asset X and Y to finalize the trade. We calculate this using the local price discovery algorithm of the system and receive the amount of value the trader will get from the system for the trade in terms of the synthetic accounting asset. In the very last step, the system converts this amount to asset Y and sends the trader the amount of Y to finalize the exchange. Before we move to the next slide, it is important to underline the importance of the stable internal accounting asset. It's acted as a synthetic intermediary asset to connect all the pools, is the denominated currency for rebalancing premium, and ensured that the complexity of transactions does not grow non-linearly with the increase in the number of assets onboarded on the system. Now, we know that the aggressiveness of the rebalancing premium function is determined by two different coefficients, A and D, that are dynamically updated to optimize the system based on changing agent behavior involved in the system. The specific coefficient described in this slide is the auction expedience parameter, which traces the behavior of the arbitrager and aims to derive the optimal level of aggressiveness that would attract just enough rebalancing traffic to ensure that the system's stable, without tipping it over to be imbalance in the other direction. In order to do this, the system quantifies a utilization rate, which demonstrates the portion of the total trading capacity of the system which has already been utilized. In the example provided, consider that the coefficient A is equal to 0.01. The current utilization rate is in the yellow interval and has stayed there for enough number of epochs for the system to assume that it's unsustainable. This triggers the auction mechanism, which incrementally increases the coefficient A, until the point when A is equal to 8.01, which attracts enough rebalancing activity to move the utilization rate back to a point in the green interval that is sustainable for the system. However, the system still keeps testing the efficiency of the rebalancing premium function. If the system detects that, and with the current coefficient A, there is extensive rebalancing demand, the system triggers the auction again, such that it decreases the rebalancing premium. This continues up to the point where rebalancing activity can be considered as optimal. Simply put, the entire process can be described using the diagram on the right-hand side. At the start, the system initiates a reverse Dutch auction, which incrementally increases coefficient A to find the optimal value. Then, if something changes in the agent behavior and the detected coefficient A is too aggressive, the system activates a Dutch auction to incrementally decrease A until a new optimal level is reached. In addition to trying to regulate an arbitrager's behavior, the system also seeks to create appropriate incentives for the optimal behavior of SLPs, using the coefficient D. In essence, the system aims to incentivize the entry of the SLPs and disincentivize the withdrawal of the SLPs during a high utilization rate period. This is accomplished by dynamically changing the coefficient D, which is regulated with the function stated on the left-hand side. In the plot on the right-hand side, you can see that during a period when the system has a high utilization rate, the withdrawal of liquidity by the SLP leads to an increase in coefficient D, thereby generating fees for the SLP. Similarly, submission of liquidity to the rebalancing pool decreases the rebalancing premium leading reward for the submitting SLP. Therefore, SLPs that leave the system pay a fee to the SLPs that enter the system. Finally, having covered the role of different agents in the system and how they're rewarded, it is important to emphasize that our rewards distribution mechanism aims to tactically allocate rewards between agents involved in the protocol. It's aimed at ensuring that agent objectives are aligned, the capital efficiency of the system is maintained, and maximum transactional volume is supported. Thank you for your time and attention.
Okay, great. So what's important for the audience to understand are that ultimately markets are actually, apparently, in a transparent market, they're quite efficient and rational. So in a dynamic function market maker, it's a dynamical system that keeps into account many various dynamics at play. Now, with that said, I think it's very important for the audience to jump in here directly from the co-authors, Armin and Karsh, the actual authors of this protocol. This is probably up on the level of 500 days of deep research. And this is cutting edge dynamics. Ultimately, what we're proposing are that if we can identify these various variables at play and understand how in a rational setting and also irrational settings, how these limits are met, we can create a more efficient system. Now, for the audience here, I think it might be very useful because most of our audience, frankly, a lot of them are very advanced folks, but maybe the mean age is 15 years old, like deep into crypto, understanding this, but also some of them are novices. So how would we try to explain the dynamic function market method in a kind of explain to me like I'm 15 years old? Yeah, would love to hear your point of view, Harman Okarsh.
Thank you, Josh. Okay, let's say if you want to explain the DFM protocol to a 15-year-old, we can use the analogy of managing a supermarket. Let's imagine a supermarket with various products where the owner is trying to optimize the prices to ensure his supermarket success. In this analogy, the supermarket owner represents the DFM protocol and the product represents the liquidity provided by LPs. Now, the owner's goal obviously is to keep his customers satisfied while also maximizing his profit. The first step the owner will take is to gather information about the prices of products sold in the supermarket. One method of collecting this data might involve relying on customer feedback and using trial and error approach where the supermarket's owner adjusts prices up and down to determine at what price point customers are willing to make purchases. However, this approach could lead to losses due to selling products at suboptimal prices, such as too low, which reduces the profit for the owner, or too high, driving away customers. Now, this analogy resembles how many current AMM designs approach to price discovery. Some of these AMMs are reliant on customer feedback to be able to determine the price, which at some point can lead to losses for liquidity providers. A more effective strategy might be for the owner to research how other supermarkets price similar products and use this information to optimize his own pricing, thereby more effectively attracting customers and earning adequate profit. This method of exploring and applying price information from other supermarkets is similar to virtual order book mechanism used by DFMM, where the DFMM is aggregating data from external venues and forming a virtual order book, which is then applied for the price discovery. However, in addition to this, knowing about what is the prices available in different venues, the supermarket might also have some perishable products like milk or bread. Since these products might go bad, we can think of the risk of product perishing as an inventory risk. Now, the owner wants to avoid the cost of unsold expired products. To do this, one effective strategy might be to apply discounts to encourage customers to buy items that are close to expiration. In addition, the owner would also strategize rate of these discounts, like, for example, potentially offering big discounts on products that expire sooner, ensuring that these products are sold quicker. This process of determining discount rates is similar to local price formation process in DFMM. Of course, this oversimplified way of presenting DFMM's design, and DFM design is much more nuanced than this. However, this example can help explain this marketplace to a 15-year-old. This is just one example. Maybe Utkarsh can think of another one.
Yes, thank you, Arman. So, as you very rightly said, supermarket can be one example of describing the dynamic function market maker to a 15-year-old. Perhaps a bookmaker, somebody who's trying to sell tickets to a sporting event, can also be an intriguing example of how we might go about explaining such a complex system. But given
Right.
how technical the
And
webinar has,
first,
please, Joe.
CD. Yeah, no, I wasn't sure if you're cutting in for me or not. But yeah, I would say definitely the explanation in terms of someone that is deeply involved in blockchain research from a 15, explain to you 5 years old, 15 years old. And I think we're going to be progressing to even 30 years old at this stage. But I think this is such a great analogy, Arman, where we emphasize that, hey, listen, there are perishable products that may have to be offloaded. And as time meets demand, the dynamics are adjust, meaning the more the system needs it, the more there's a like contribution towards fulfilling that need in our system. So we're talking about a supermarket, but yeah, but that's not a Karsh. Your signal was just in and out here. I just wanted to say, I think you're clear now. But yes, when I say explain it to us, or 50-year-old, this 50-year-old, 30-year-old, 55-year-old, etc., we want to cover the whole spectrum here. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Indeed, Josh, what I was trying to do there was try to pick out an example which would hopefully be something immediately outside a very serious commercial space. Been thinking about this as Armand was speaking. We've been trying to come up with good examples. So we thought, just given the fact that it's already been a very technical webinar so far, so perhaps we could try to take a more lighter route and try to think of someone trying to be in the business of comedy plays and selling tickets. So imagine that somebody is trying to make a comedy play for a populace that they know really well. And by that, they know their potential audience really well, using data they have on anyone who might they wish to attract for their shows. So now consider that the play is being directed by a very tech savvy director who can adjust what actors are doing on stage, what kind of music is playing in the background, the dialogues, the style of delivery in real time, just as he watches what and how audience is reacting to the things that are coming up on the stage. But the director is so tech savvy that he can not only observe the audience's reaction in real time, but also directly give an indication to the actors of how to adjust their behavior, how to ensure that everyone is having a good time. This is a bit like the role of DFMM, our director in this case, where it knows the experience that PLPs, primary liquidity providers, secondary liquidity providers, which is the SLPs, traders and arbitrageurs, the kind of experience they're having, and trying to ensure that the system is always adjusting to ensure an optimality of all-round exposure. Now, going back to the example of this comic play, and please do excuse such a silly analogy, but we thought perhaps if we think outside the box, we might be able to communicate the message in a bit more clearer way. Now, imagine the director is observing the audience as his team is putting on a show and the audience laughs to something. Now, the director gets a positive signal. Imagine the audience seems anxious. There are a lot of sighs in the room. The director gets signal to adjust what's happening on the screen, right? On the stage, right? Now, this is a bit like monitoring the vault balances, trading activity, and the open inventory position in the dynamic function market maker. Now, this director is not just monitoring what his own audience is doing, but actually what the audience is doing in a neighboring theater. Because instead of just competing for attention of the audience that's already in the theater watching the show, they're also competing for new eyeballs from competing venues. Now, since the audience can leave anytime and go to the theater next door or vice versa, his job is to always ensure he's got everyone captivated, and that captivation continues throughout the entirety of the show. Now, in order to do this, what he's doing is he's trying to also figure out what's happening in competing venues and how are other people reacting to whatever's going on in the neighboring theaters. This is a bit like the virtual order book and the external liquidity density function mechanism that we have tried to describe in our dynamic function market maker. Now, obviously, the director is using all these signals to give signals and orders to folks that are putting on a show on the stage. But what if the director doesn't have enough of a specific type of actor that is leading to a very good response by the audience? In that case, they can send a runner to the competing theater and try to fetch some of theirs and say, hey guys, we're actually having a really good show here. Come and help us out. Maybe you'll be able to reach a much broader audience by being in our theater. That's somewhat equivalent to the rebalancing premium and the experience parameter, because here the director is looking at how do I go about attracting as quickly as possible the type of talent, the type of events I want to be unfolding on the stage from anywhere I possibly can to my theater. Yeah, in a sense, the equivalence of a director trying to direct a very comic play, trying to captivate the audience in a very tech-savvy world is somewhat akin to what our dynamic function market maker is trying to do, which is glean signals from a very wide variety of external and internal sources, and then eventually translate them into ensuring that there's optimality of experience and there is harmonization of incentives. There's a clear alignment. Hopefully that helped us motivate the problem.
That was very good explanation, Karsh. That was beautiful, actually. So ultimately, we're trying to describe dynamics at play and human motivation. Now, some motivations in DeFi are seeking yield. Some motivations for builders are attention and utilization of their creation. And there are multiple dynamics at play that create this orchestra, so to speak. And the director, it's a very dynamical system. Now, in the traditional world, this might be through a Beethoven or a Vickers or an Armand. But what we're moving towards is Mozart, right? We're moving towards, however, is an algorithmic system that has clear objectives, that has data it can reflect upon and in real time adjust towards very specific objectives and outcomes. So I think that was such a wonderful example. For the record, this is the first time I've heard this example. I'd have to say this is so great. I think our audience, because I understood this even in a deeper way myself, I think our audience really appreciated this as well. So what is Supra ultimately doing though? The technologies we create are decentralized, right? So there is a decentralized brain and monitoring system and nervous system that can understand the objectives. Now, I should be clear that this conversation, our previous webinars, etc., this is not financial advice. This is not relationship advice. This is not any advice related to. So we'll have some clear disclaimers here. Bottom line is, we think there is a possibility that with human kind of intervention in terms of governance, we can tweak an algorithmic system, be highly effective and highly fair for many people because it's deterministic, transparent. What is the objective of a dynamic function market maker? It's to mitigate impermanent loss and slippage to be the best venue in which you can exchange value across layer ones and layer twos. And the folks here, Armand and Karsh, have pioneered a framework in which we have the ability to engage multiple actors and agents in a rational setting to facilitate value exchange. And some of this value exchange really requires a couple of things. Price feeds, real-time price feed information with volume-weighted information, cross-chain communication, automation, beyond, so forth. Moving forward here, without going too deeply into the whole scope, I do want to say, because I want to say thank you to our Armand and Karsh. I know Armand actually, believe it or not, everyone is going through a cold. I'm sure he'll be strong and recovered very soon, but we push forward. So I want to invite the team and our audience to do a couple things. One, read the white paper. Two, revisit this presentation and dissect the dynamic function market maker. And three, reach out to us. We're very collaborative and we will create a section on our website for FAQs. We have a lot of questions that came in. And because I want to just preserve our team's health and contributions, we're going to keep this call relatively short. But I want to invite our audience, please do deliberately tonight, tomorrow, reach out to us, email us, collaborate with us, point out possible things where we may have the unknown unknowns. That's the most scary territory. But unless we think we have a good framework and the summary of the supermarket, a theater, like where we have products that there's an urgency in which we let them go, and then there's an option to acquire them. There's always in the economic realm a pricing which is rational for someone to pick it up. There's that. And then also, just so the team and our audience knows, we provided an expedient, like give you XFAS, a premium to XFAS, by the way. So wonderful dynamics. The dynamic function market maker is a live living system. The inputs are the Oracle database, automation, cross-chain communication, etc. And this will lead to better execution for cross-chain communication, execution, trades, and intents. In maybe 3, 4, 5 weeks, not months, I'll be very clear, weeks, there will be another presentation on intralayer, Supra as this middleware intralayer, which talks about Supra as a super innovative business model. Okay. And we'll dive into that soon. What, we heard here in the last 5 weeks is the core pieces. And we're going to put it all together very soon. And then we're going to market. Now, all you folks are asking about when is TGE token generation event. Hold your horses. I guarantee it's going to happen. I just can't give you a specific second yet. It'll happen soon. Tune in, reach out to us, communicate on Twitter. Suggestion is ask us the questions. We'll respond. And with that said, let's wrap up today. Really, Arma and Cars, thank you for showing up. And despite congestion in your chats, etc., in your voice, we're going to have a really incredible conversation next week as well. In terms of parallel compute, Supra has novel ideas that compete with the state of the art in terms of smart contract execution, parallel compute. And for the first time ever, we're going to reveal these things. We're going to show data to make sure you show up to next week's webinar. This is cutting edge. We're going to compare ourselves to Solana, Aptos, Sui, Monad. Say, Supra is going to put forth a new paradigm that performs extremely well. And we're going to show the evidence. So tune in a week and then follow up with us right now. If you have questions, we're not going to do Q&A today. Arma, thank you for showing up with your throat is so sore. I appreciate that. We will, however, answer every question. Reach out to us on Slack, on Twitter, X, email, and appreciate it. So we'll see you in a week with parallel execution strategies, another next generation protocol and technique that Supra is bringing to the table. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.